Imagine a world where, the founders of the next trillion-dollar AI companies are legally, mathematically blocked from becoming billionaires.
Right.
Like, not by government taxes or antitrust regulations, but by a self-destruct sequence built directly into their own stock options.
Yeah, it's an incredibly aggressive re-engineering of the incentives that drive innovation.
It really is. Today, we are doing a deep dive into a manifesto that argues that limitless personal wealth isn't just unethical in the age of artificial intelligence. It's actually a fatal engineering flaw.
Exactly. We are looking at a document titled The Matrix of Maximality. The subtitle is Capping Wealth to Unleash Abundance.
Written by Paramendra, right? Dated June 4, 2026.
That's the one. And I mean, this isn't some political pamphlet just asking for higher marginal tax rates.
Right.
It is a highly technical blueprint.
Yeah, it really gets into the weeds.
It does. It proposes a complete from-the-ground-up restructuring of corporate capitalism via internal corporate governance.
So, okay, let's unpack this for you guys listening, because the core tension here is about the environment changing faster than the machinery.
Right. The author is looking at the imminent convergence of advanced AI and robotics and concluding that the operating system of modern business is just fundamentally incompatible with the reality these technologies are about to create.
Which is a wild claim. And to be clear up front, our mission in this deep dive isn't to endorse this wealth capping vision.
Definitely not.
And we aren't here to debunk it either. We are just going to impartially break down the author's mechanics because this text proposes some structural changes that are, well, they're pretty radical.
Very radical. We are talking hard dollar caps on founder wealth, bounded math for venture capital returns, and a mechanism that literally decouples voting power from financial value.
Yeah, the voting power thing is fascinating. But before we get into the exact math of, a $10 million floor or a $100 million ceiling, we have to look at the macro environment the author claims is forcing this shift.
Right, the catalyst.
Exactly. The text builds everything on the premise that we are transitioning from a scarcity economy to a state of radical abundance.
And the author draws a really sharp line there between the economic reality we have inhabited for all of recorded human history and the one we're entering right now.
So how do they define that scarcity economy?
Well, a scarcity economy is defined by finite resources. I mean, land, human labor, computation, energy. There's only so much to go around.
Right.
And in that environment, the most rational evolutionary behavior is hoarding.
That makes total sense. If you and I are operating in a market with a limited supply of raw materials, our competition is inherently zero-sum.
Exactly zero-sum.
My accumulation of capital provides a buffer against the inherent danger of that scarcity.
Right. And the corporate structures we rely on today, things like fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value, limitless equity upside, those are highly optimized survival strategies for a finite world.
Because they reward the aggressive acquisition and protection of scarce assets?
Spot on. But the author argues that AI and robotics are breaking that zero-sum equation entirely.
Yeah, it's like playing a survival game where you've suddenly unlocked infinite resources. But players are still obsessively hoarding wood and stone out of habit,
That's a great analogy.
And they're preventing the whole server from building a city because of it. We are talking about a scenario where a localized AI system can design a complex product, and an automated robotic supply chain can extract the materials, assemble it, and deliver it with a marginal cost approaching zero.
Which changes everything. If human labor and intelligence are no longer the bottleneck, the fundamental constraint of scarcity evaporates.
Right, but I feel like the transition from scarcity to abundance is often misunderstood as just, things getting cheaper.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a discount. The author is pointing to a structural phase change. What's fascinating here is you think about the transition from physical on-premise data servers to cloud computing.
Oh yeah, like the AWS shift?
Exactly. Yeah. Before the cloud, a company had to hoard physical hardware. You had to anticipate peak loads years in advance and spend massive capital on depreciating assets just to survive.
Right, it was a massive barrier to entry.
It was. But once compute became an elastic, on-demand utility, the entire concept of hoarding servers became absurd.
It actually became a competitive disadvantage.
Exactly. And the text argues that AI and robotics are about to do to physical goods, human labor, and basic needs what AWS did to data storage.
Wow. So when the author claims that currency and traditional ownership models will lose their grip on human motivation, they are suggesting our current corporate architecture is like a CEO in 2026 desperately trying to build a bigger physical server room.
Right, it's an obsolete reflex.
But here is the pushback I kept thinking about while reading this. Currency isn't just about buying physical goods, right?
Yeah.
Currency is social status, it's security, it's access to exclusive experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even if AI makes housing, food, and basic healthcare practically free, how does a technological shift erase thousands of years of psychological conditioning? The drive for status seems so deeply hardwired into us.
Well, the author doesn't suggest that human ambition or the desire for status just magically disappears.
Okay.
They suggest the currency of status evolves. In the paradigm of radical abundance, when the baseline of survival is universally guaranteed by automated systems, the sheer desperation that drives endless financial accumulation is removed.
So the psychological driver just shifts entirely.
Right. The text implies that if anyone can have a mansion built by robots for next to nothing, the mansion is no longer a signal of exceptionalism.
Oh, I see. The accumulation of paper wealth loses its signaling power.
Exactly. Instead, ambition is forced to pivot toward the pursuit of meaning, creation, and what the text terms long-term human flourishing.
Long-term human flourishing. I like that. And I want to ask you, listening to this right now, to think about your own daily KPIs for a second.
Yeah, that's a good exercise.
Consider the corporate ladder you might be climbing, the quarterly goals dominating your industry. How much of that entire architecture is built purely on the assumption that resources, market share, and capital are scarce and must be extracted from competitors?
Probably most of it, right?
Yeah, nearly all of it. If your industry suddenly unlocked limitless automated labor tomorrow, the current hierarchical structure optimized for resource extraction wouldn't just be unnecessary, it would actively slow down innovation.
And that friction between the new limitless capacity of AI and the old hoarding algorithms of corporate structure is exactly what leads to the author's primary diagnosis.
Diagnosis of the broken system.
Right. Because when an obsolete system operates in an era of abundance, the result isn't just inefficiency. The text identifies a severe societal pathology that emerges.
The phrase used in the text is the blight of idle hoarding.
Yes.
And I want to look closely at that word blight. It's an agricultural term for rot, right? Like a disease that decimates ecosystems.
A very strong word choice.
It is. The author is framing idle capital, these vast personal fortunes that just sit dormant as an active, destructive force.
Yeah, it's not a neutral byproduct of success. It is a pathogen within the economic system.
Which changes how we think about capital efficiency entirely.
It does. Because in traditional economics, massive capital accumulation is often rationalized as stored energy for future deployment.
Right. Saving up to build a factory or fund research.
Exactly. But Paramendra argues that in a post-scarcity world, wealth beyond reasonable personal utility that is neither spent nor productively reinvested becomes a drag on collective progress.
A drag on collective progress. That makes sense because capital has to maintain velocity, right?
Yes, exactly. Trapped in a dormant state, like a dragon sitting on gold, it represents frozen potential. That capital could otherwise be fueling innovation or building essential infrastructure or just direct human welfare.
And we actually see the early stages of this blight today in the public market.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, look at massive tech conglomerates sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars in cash reserves. Instead of deploying that capital into high-risk R&D, curing diseases, or building next-generation energy grids, what do?
Stock buyback.
Exactly. They engage in endless stock buybacks. They artificially inflate the scarcity of their own shares just to pump the paper wealth of the executive class.
Yeah, and the author is effectively saying that behavior transitions from a clever financial maneuver in a scarcity economy to a literal crime against human potential in an abundance economy.
A crime against human potential, that is a heavy critique.
It really is. It forces a hard definition of productive reinvestment. Like, how does a board of directors recognize the exact moment a company crosses the line from building necessary tools for the world to merely functioning as a wealth extraction vehicle for its founders?
That's the million-dollar question, or I guess the billion-dollar question.
Right. The text describes entrenched oligarchies clinging to paper wealth that is destined to lose relevance anyway.
Destined to lose relevance because of AI.
Exactly. The critique here is that the global economy is increasingly optimized to protect these dormant pools of capital, rather than utilizing the AI tools at our disposal to solve actual human problems.
So the diagnosis is clear. Traditional limitless equity creates a hoarding pathology.
Yes.
But to cure this blight, the author doesn't propose external government intervention.
No, not at all.
There is no call for a wealth tax or a state-run redistribution board. Instead, the solution is purely mechanical and internal to the corporation.
This is where it gets really structural.
Yeah, enter the Matrix of Maximality. This is a 10-layer organizational framework designed around what the author calls the architecture of enough.
Right. This is where the manifesto moves from macroeconomic theory into actual corporate governance design.
Let's break down these 10 layers.
So the matrix envisions a structure where personal net worth derived from the company is strictly contractually bounded.
Contractually bounded, so it's baked into the employment agreements.
Exactly. At the foundational layers, the entry-level operators, the core engineers, wealth accumulation is capped at $10 million.
A $10 million floor.
Yes. And for the top layer, which is reserved for visionary leadership and core strategic roles, the absolute ceiling is $100 million.
Okay, so a $10 million floor and a $100 million ceiling. The numbers are specific, and the justification provided is fascinating.
It is. The author argues that $100 million represents more than enough for a life of comfort, opportunity, and impact in a developed economy.
More than enough. But let's stress test the psychology of that ceiling for a second, because
Yeah.
here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say I am a visionary founder. I build an AI lab that completely revolutionizes personalized medicine. My equity value rockets to that $100 million cap.
Right, you hit the ceiling.
Under the current rules of Silicon Valley, the promise of becoming a billionaire is the carrot that keeps me working 80-hour weeks. So if I hit my cap, and I know I cannot extract a single dollar more from my personal estate, what keeps me coming to work? Why don't I just step down, buy a private island, and let someone else deal with the stress of running a global enterprise?
That is the ultimate defense of limitless upside, right?
Exactly.
And the author actually tackles that exact defense. The prevailing theory is that humans require infinite financial incentive to produce infinite innovation.
Right, the idea that ambition requires endless money.
But the Matrix of Maximality argues that this is a complete misreading of human motivation, particularly for elite founders.
Also,
The text connects the wealth caps directly to what it calls the Grand Solara Vision.
the Grand Solara Vision. Let's unpack that.
The theory is that once your baseline of extreme comfort is permanently secured and financially locked in, your motivation doesn't vanish. It upgrades.
It upgrades, like
Yeah.
moving up Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Exactly. You transition from working for personal security to working for legacy, purpose, and the survival of the species.
It's an aggressive bet on that self-actualization phase. The assumption is that the person capable of building a world-changing AI doesn't actually care about the difference between 100 million and 500 million in terms of lifestyle.
Right, because functionally, what does that extra 400 million even buy you that you can't already have?
A slightly bigger boat.
Exactly. The text argues they care about the impact of the machine they are building, not the boat.
But it also applies to the foundational layer, too. If you are an engineer whose wealth is capped at 10 million, the author suggests your compensation and equity are generous within those bounds.
Right, you are rewarded for real contribution.
But the system actively prevents the creation of what the text calls unnecessary billionaires.
Unnecessary billionaires. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the manifesto.
It really is. It implies a point of diminishing marginal utility that becomes actively toxic.
Yes. The accumulation of the next $1 billion provides zero added material utility to the individual founder.
But it exacts a massive opportunity cost on society because that capital is locked away from deployment.
Exactly. The matrix is designed to create a transparent, predictable ecosystem. So employees know the value they create beyond those caps isn't going to buy the CEO a fourth super yacht.
Wow. Think about how that structural transparency would completely rewire corporate culture.
Oh, it would be night and day.
If you know that every dollar of profit generated above the leadership's cap is mathematically bound to serve a broader purpose, employee alignment changes entirely.
Absolutely. Resentment regarding executive compensation kind of just dissolves because the ceiling is absolute and transparent.
You are no longer a cog in a machine designed to enrich a single individual. You are a participant in an engine generating societal abundance.
That's the vision. But while that solves the incentive structure for employees and founders, it introduces a severe friction point when we look at the broader financial ecosystem.
The investors.
Right. A company operating under this matrix still requires initial capital to scale, especially in capital-intensive fields like hardware robotics or massive compute clusters.
Right. You can't just bootstrap a global AI network from your garage anymore. You need billions in compute.
You do. This requires investors. And capping the people who supply the capital challenges the very bedrock of modern venture economics.
The author's solution for investors is wild. They propose a strict, mathematically bounded structure for returns.
Let's get into the math on this because it's so specific.
Okay, so investors operate under a disciplined structure. They are capped at a 10x return on their initial capital over a 10-year horizon.
Okay, 10x over 10 years.
Yes, with an additional 1x multiplier for each year of delay beyond that horizon. So an 11-year return is capped at 11x. 12 years is 12x.
Wow.
Yeah. In the venture capital world, where funds rely on one 1,000x unicorn to pay for 90 startups that go bankrupt, that math fundamentally breaks the current Silicon Valley model.
It shatters it.
So, does the author actually have a mechanism to replace the power law dynamic? Or are they just intentionally filtering out modern venture capital altogether?
It's the latter. The text is intentionally hostile to the power law dynamic.
Really?
Yes, the author is actively trying to filter out a specific class of capital. The manifesto states that this bounded return structure creates strong incentives for patient capital without rewarding indefinite hoarding.
Patient capital, that's an interesting term.
Right, because modern VC math forces investors to push companies toward hypergrowth, monopolistic behavior, and extreme extraction.
Often at the expense of the company's actual social utility.
Exactly. They need the company to attempt to conquer the world to get that 1,000x return, even if a sustainable 10x return would be healthier for the product and the public.
So by capping the return, the author is asking a highly confrontational question to the capital markets. The text literally asks, how much more do you want?
It's a direct challenge.
If a 10x return over a decade, which by the way is historically a phenomenal yield.
Incredible yield.
Right. If that isn't enough for an investor, the text suggests that investor is engaged in speculative extraction at the expense of the mission.
The Matrix welcomes capital, but it refuses to let capital dictate the operational timeline or the ultimate purpose of the AI being developed.
Which fundamentally changes the relationship between founder and funder. It forces investors to underwrite fundamental viability rather than speculative hype.
Exactly. If you know your absolute ceiling is 10x, you aren't going to fund a company based on the hope of a greater fool IPO exit.
You can't.
Right. You have to believe the company will actually generate enough real-world value to securely return that 10x.
It shifts the investor's role from a speculator demanding infinite scale to a partner aligned with sustainable, patient growth.
But this brings us to what might be the most complex mechanical flaw in the entire concept of wealth capping.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. The control issue.
Let's look at the founder and CEO scenario again.
Okay, let's play it out. I'm the founder. I hold 51% of the shares so I can protect my vision from hostile takeovers.
All right, very standard.
The company succeeds, and the financial value of my equity breaches the $100 million cap.
Okay.
In a traditional corporate structure, the only way to shed that excess wealth is to sell my shares or donate them.
Yes.
But the moment I transfer those shares, I lose my voting power, I drop below 51%, and I lose control of the AI system I built.
And no visionary founder is going to voluntarily hand over the steering wheel to a board that might immediately dismantle the wealth caps and revert to profit extraction.
Exactly. Why would I give up the company I built just to satisfy a wealth cap? It defeats the whole purpose of the Grand Solara vision if I get ousted by activists on day one of hitting the cap.
And the author anticipates this exact dilemma.
I was hoping they did.
They do. And the solution proposed is, I think, the most operationally brilliant part of the manifesto.
How to solve it?
The Matrix avoids this trap by fundamentally decoupling power from wealth at the molecular level of the stock itself.
Decoupling power from wealth.
Right. The text explains that this isn't a post facto redistribution. It is a pre-engineered governance model embedded in the founding documents.
It's essentially a corporate smart contract.
Yes, exactly.
Break down how that smart contract actually executes. How does a founder give away the financial upside without giving away the voting leverage?
It relies on an automated dynamic share split.
Okay.
The text states that when a founder's net worth tied to the company exceeds the $100 million cap, their shares bifurcate.
They bifurcate, like they split in two.
Essentially, yes.
Hmm.
The financial component, the right to future dividends, liquidation payouts, and massive financial upside detaches and transfers to a dedicated public purpose foundation.
Wow. Okay. And what about the voting rights?
However, the voting proxy, the operational authority to steer the company, remains entirely with the founder.
That is a staggering legal maneuver.
It really is.
A traditional share of stock binds financial claim and governance into one single unit. By splitting them at a specific valuation threshold, the author has engineered a graceful off-ramp for extreme wealth.
Graceful off-ramp, yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it solves the founder's dilemma perfectly. The founder remains the undisputed architect of the company's vision.
They don't have to fear being ousted by hostile activists. They can continue to drive the company toward the grand Solara vision.
But they are structurally blocked from extracting any more personal wealth from the machine.
It permanently short-circuits the billionaire trajectory while preserving visionary stability. You can be the undisputed king of your corporate vision, but you can't be a dragon sleeping on a pile of gold.
Well said. It is a mechanism designed to protect the integrity of the technology.
Because if we are talking about artificial general intelligence or global autonomous logistics, continuity of leadership might be a matter of global security.
Oh, absolutely. You want the visionary at the helm, but you do not want them incentivized by limitless personal financial gain.
This decoupling ensures the company's output is optimized for the mission, not the market cap.
And notice the contrast the author draws between this voluntary, transparent model and punitive taxation.
Yeah, that's key. It's an internal corporate mechanism, not a state-imposed law. The founders choose this.
Exactly. But okay, so the foundation is now sitting on the financial rights to the most powerful AI companies in the world.
Right, because all that excess upside has detached and flowed into this entity.
Yes. As the company scales, a massive, potentially unprecedented flow of excess capital begins pouring into this dedicated foundation.
This brings us to the most crucial part of the manifesto. Where exactly does all this excess unleashed capital actually go?
Right.
Because historically, philanthropic foundations are notoriously inefficient. They hoard capital too.
They absolutely do.
They build massive endowments, spend millions on administrative overhead, and move at a glacial pace. Does the author have a mechanical safeguard against this foundation just becoming another bureaucratic swamp?
They do. The text is highly specific about the deployment strategy to avoid institutional hoarding.
Okay, what is the strategy?
The redirected capital is not meant to be parked in a perpetual endowment funding pet projects. It is channeled into a single, high-leverage initiative,
Which is?
the global eradication of extreme poverty.
Wow.
And crucially, it mandates execution via direct cash transfers, bypassing traditional NGO infrastructure entirely.
Bypassing NGOs entirely, so no middlemen.
Exactly.
The author points to India's digital public infrastructure as the proof of concept for this, right?
Yes, specifically the Aadhaar system and the Unified Payments Interface, or UPI.
Right. For you listening who follow global fintech, the implications of utilizing these specific rails are massive. We aren't talking about shipping pallets of food or funding microloan bureaucracies.
No, not at all.
The text highlights the combination of biometric digital identity paired with instant, trackable, cryptographic payments.
The critical phrase the author uses here is near zero leakage.
Near zero leakage. That is the holy grail of philanthropy.
It is. Historically, the friction in global aid has been the delivery mechanism. Capital had to pass through layers of international administration, local governments, and regional fixers.
Right. The administrative overhead and corruption. The leakage often consumed the majority of the funds before they reached the ground.
But by leveraging systems like UPI, the foundation can essentially beam excess AI-generated wealth directly into the digital wallet of the poorest individuals on Earth.
Instantly, with zero middlemen. It treats poverty eradication not as an intractable moral failing, but as an engineering and logistics problem that can be solved with untethered, high-velocity capital.
Yes, but the text anticipates the immediate logistical objection here.
Which is, what about regions of extreme poverty that lack the digital infrastructure of a system like UPI? You can't beam money to a phone that doesn't exist on a network that isn't built.
Exactly, and the author's mandate for that is very clear. Where the infrastructure does not exist, the foundation's primary directive is to build it.
Oh, wow. So they fund the rails themselves.
Yes. They are tasked with funding the creation of secure digital identities, interoperable payment rails, and the last-mile connectivity required to deliver the capital.
It's not just about setting up charities that spend 50% of their budget on administration. It's about building the pipes to deliver the abundance.
Right.
Think about the macroeconomic shockwave of that deployment.
You would be staggered.
You have highly efficient, automated corporate engines generating massive surplus value at the top. And rather than trapping that surplus in offshore accounts or stock buybacks, the Matrix routes it directly to the global bottom billion,
Exactly. You are instantly bringing billions of marginalized people into the global economic fold.
providing them with the unconstrained liquidity to participate in markets, start businesses, and build local infrastructure. It is the most aggressive, systemic expansion of human agency imaginable.
And it aligns perfectly with the author's initial thesis regarding the shift from scarcity to abundance.
Because it closes the loop.
Yes. The system isn't just generating abundance. It is mechanically enforcing the distribution of that abundance to elevate the global baseline.
The text refers to this as accelerating humanitarian floor raising. Every excess dollar accelerates this floor raising.
Right. Every dollar of profit generated past the founder's cap directly attacks the architecture of global poverty. What is the cascading effect on the global economy when extreme poverty is eradicated directly by corporate overflow rather than struggling government programs?
It fundamentally rewrites the relationship between corporations and society, which actually brings us to the author's final existential challenge to the leaders of today.
Yeah, the manifesto really builds up to this point.
The entire text, all of these complex corporate mechanics and deployment strategies, culminates in a single stark question directed at the founders, executives, and investors who are currently building the systems that will define the next century.
The text asks, if your net worth, whether 10 million, 10 billion, or $1 trillion, is destined to lose relevance in a few short decades of technological abundance, what kind of transition do you want to shape?
What a devastating reframing of legacy.
It really is.
If the underlying assumption holds true, that AI will drive the marginal cost of production for basic human needs to zero, then the concept of paper wealth is going to experience a hyperdeflation of meaning.
Exactly. Clinging to billions of dollars in a post-scarcity world is like fiercely guarding a warehouse full of ice blocks after the invention of the refrigerator.
That's a perfect way to put it. The author is warning these leaders that they are optimizing their entire lives for a high score in a game that is about to be unplugged.
And the dichotomy presented in the text is very rigid.
Yeah, there is no middle ground.
On one side, you have the default path. Entrenched oligarchies using their resources to build higher walls to protect assets that are rapidly losing their intrinsic meaning.
Which results in massive societal friction and pathology.
Right. And on the other side, the Matrix of Maximality. Pioneering companies deliberately choosing to master the ethics of abundance, voluntarily capping their extraction, and lifting the global floor.
Under the old scarcity matrix, success was defined by maximizing personal extraction. The ultimate winner was whoever accumulated the largest pile of resources.
Right, because that was what survival required.
But the Matrix of Maximality demands a paradigm shift. It replaces the mandate to maximize personal extraction with the mandate to maximize total human potential.
Exactly.
It doesn't ask leaders to take a vow of poverty. I mean, a $100 million cap guarantees dynastic security.
Right, you're still incredibly wealthy.
But it demands the psychological evolution to recognize when enough has been achieved. How difficult is this paradigm shift for leaders trained in the old zero-sum matrix?
It requires a profound level of self-awareness. The author suggests that the leaders who embrace this structural transition will not be remembered for the market capitalization of their companies or their TEAC ranking on a billionaire index.
No, they will be remembered for the graceful, intentional way they navigated the most dangerous economic transition in human history.
They will be the architects who recognized that the old machinery was outmoded and voluntarily re-engineered it before it tore society apart.
So let's synthesize the entire blueprint we've explored today.
Okay, let's pull it all together.
The Matrix of Maximality is a voluntary blueprint for the age of AI. It is a pre-engineered corporate smart contract that enforces a $10 million wealth floor and a $100 million ceiling for its operators.
Right. It mathematically bounds venture capital to a patient 10x return.
It utilizes a dynamic share split to decouple visionary operational control from financial extraction, allowing founders to steer their companies without hoarding the surplus.
And it directs the resulting torrent of excess AI capital through frictionless digital public infrastructure to systematically eradicate extreme global poverty.
It is a closed-loop system designed to override the hoarding instincts of a scarcity economy and automate the ethical distribution of radical abundance.
And technology like AGI and advanced robotics will inevitably reshape the means of production. But the author argues that how we structure the organizations that control that technology is entirely a matter of human choice.
We've covered a massive amount of technical and philosophical ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
For you listening, the mechanics proposed in this text challenge the bedrock assumptions of fiduciary duty, ambition, and the purpose of capital. It forces us to ask whether the corporate structures we rely on today are actually capable of surviving the technologies they are currently building.
That is the ultimate question.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over or explore on your own. We've spent the last hour dissecting how the system limits individual wealth to elevate the collective.
Right.
If a single generation of elite founders actually adopts this matrix, if the creators of the definitive AI models and autonomous logistics networks embed these caps in their founding documents today, we are looking at a terminal event for a specific class of human being.
A terminal event.
Think about the implications. We could theoretically be the very last generation in human history to know what the word billionaire practically means.
Wow.
Is it possible that the ultimate defining technological disruption of our era isn't a new language model or a breakthrough in robotic dexterity, but the intentional, mathematically engineered extinction of limitless personal wealth?
That is something to think about.
It really is. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked this complex blueprint alongside you. Keep questioning the architecture of the systems around you, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.